So, guys, I know we're making a new video, but I didn't really think of anything funny for this one. Would you really
Do
do?
do we really need a funny intro for this video?
No, not at all, guys. Come on, we're getting ready to talk about consent in gaming, and you know that's kind of a serious topic. So let's be serious and let's talk about it.
Hey, yo, it's your boy Ancient Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have the usual suspects of AD or Alpha D, and we have Spigs, 18, or Anthony. And yeah, we're here to discuss something rather delicate. So, Dean, what are we here to talk about?
Well, people, here to talk about role playing games and everything as usual. From the depths of dealing with bloodthirsty vampires to delving into dark, deep caverns, role playing is an experience unlike anything that most people do on a regular basis. But it is rather cool. It allows us to experience and express ourselves in a multitude of ways. Game masters get to tell great stories, players get to experience those stories and add to the narratives. This is what it's all about. It's a shared experience and is intended to be fun for everyone involved. So, we're going to step further into the real world aspects of it. And we have to deal with the reality that sometimes you might overstep your bounds, or you might, or everybody may not be on the same accord about what's going to happen in that game. So, we're here today to discuss the Consent in Gaming product by Shanna Germain and Sean K. Reynolds, given to us by Monty Cook Games. It's a free PDF available on their site. So, we'll just take it a step further, and I'm going to hand the ball off to Anthony, and he's going to, get us up to speed on exactly how we're going to approach this.
Yeah. Thanks, Dean. Yeah, this is a really controversial topic, so I'm glad we getting a chance to discuss it. We're gonna do a brief walkthrough of the 13 pages that this document entails, and hopefully afterwards we'll give you what our thoughts are on whether we think it's worth it or not, or whether it's good for the industry. But before we even go any further, I just want to start off with reading. I want to read the disclaimer that they put at the very beginning of the document, because I think it's very important, and I think that this disclaimer for some reason seems to be missed by a lot of people, or they just chose to ignore it. So I'm just going to read the disclaimer first. But it states this product is designed to be a resource on consent and gaming, but it is not meant to be a comprehensive document on the topic. There are many ways to accomplish a safe, supportive, and inclusive group at the gaming table, and we encourage you to research and use any that are appropriate to your group. Check out the additional resource list at the end of this document for some great places to start. And the document leads off with that. I mean, they have like a brief overview, similar to what Dean was saying, but that right there tells you, in my opinion, that it's you know, this is take what you want sort of document. Take what is useful to you.
And discard the rest.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, just like anything in gaming, you use what's beneficial for you, that helps you out, helps you group out, and then you really don't really have to really bother with the rest. It's just like anything else in this hobby. But the document again, it details a lot of different aspects of what you can do to foster a safe environment at your gaming table. And again, it's only an 11-page document. So it doesn't go into super crazy detail about certain things. Like the disclaimer said, it's not a comprehensive document on the topic whatsoever. But it does have some handy tidbits, advice, and tools to use at your table to ensure that everyone's having a fun and safe time.
It's a foundational outline, if you will, you know, um, and we're going to touch on the topics that were written out through here, but the other reality is that there's been a lot of controversy out there, a lot of negative feedback. There's been positive feedback as well, but there's been a lot of negative
Yeah.
feedback. So we're going to
I,
kind of touch on that too.
I think like it it first starts off as saying that the default answer is no, meaning that a person should be able to opt in as opposed to have to opt out, which I can understand that concept, and I agree with that concept wholeheartedly. You know, you shouldn't assume someone is okay with something that might trigger some sort of emotion. It's better to actually have that discussion beforehand and allow the person to decide whether they want to state that they're uncomfortable, but it's also okay if they just say that they're uncomfortable and not have to just you know
Give
state
you
it
any more
outright.
information.
Yes.
And that's okay. And here's another reality that a lot of people, and I've heard some statements about it, but I'm going to say it as well. And this is very true. 90% of the time, if you're sitting at a table, if you're playing online, you're playing with people you're playing with your friends. So everybody has a gauge of, the norms of what's going on. But you as a game master, you decide you want to push the envelope a little bit. Hey, you might need to have a discussion even with your closest friends.
That is
I have a group that I've been playing with for over 20 years. And every now and then we'll have a discussion about what's going to happen in the game within the parameters. What is everybody expecting or looking for? You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whereas in the same breath, you know, you're going to conventions or you're hosting games for groups of strangers, you know, and you got this massive idea, and it might be, it could very well be probably some of the best written game material ever. It could be movie worthy. But if you have somebody that's going to be uncomfortable with it, everybody wants to talk about, what's right and fair. You don't expose people to things that could be, uh, triggering, plain and simple.
It's funny you say that because they actually break down the the most important things about consent, and that's another checklist we could go over. And then they have little paragraphs describing what they mean by each one of those. But the first one is you decide what's safe for you. You shouldn't allow anyone else to tell you, you know, how do you feel about anything. If you feel uncomfortable, you shouldn't allow someone to try to persuade and change your opinion on things. And that's pretty straightforward. Like we spoke earlier, the default answer is no. Then it's followed by it doesn't matter why consent was given.
wasn't given.
What wasn't given?
Yeah, and in that case, it's just like if someone says they don't like something, you don't have to get, as the GM or maybe another player at the table, you don't have to get personally offended that this person, doesn't want to partake in whatever it might be. It's the fact that it doesn't really matter why they don't like the thing at hand, the topic at hand. It's the thing that matters is that they don't like it.
Right. And you don't need a reason. They don't have to give you a reason. They can just say, hey, I'm not into this.
It explains right into the next one. Nobody has to explain why they're not consented. Which is, and I know that that's been a contentious statement and
many circles about this particular guy.
That sentence in particular, how dare you? They don't have to give me an answer. Well, sometimes, there's a lot of factors why they wouldn't give you an answer. Embarrassment, personal pain, maybe not fully sure. They don't have the answer themselves.
How about it's just basically none of your business?
That's a huge one.
Honestly, and people have got to realize if you're sitting at a table with a group of friends and one of your friends comes up and say, hey, I'm not with that, or don't do that. And you of course, you're immediately going to be like, what's wrong? What's going on? You're concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to let people express themselves in their time.
Mm-hmm.
You can't force a person, you can't force a person to, you just can't force a person to feel better at that moment.
Yes. And that leads into one of the other bullet points is it's not up for debate. If someone says that they're uncomfortable with a certain aspect or topic, that doesn't put the onus on you to try to convince them to be okay with it. It's not appropriate. It'll possibly bring up bad memories or whatever have you, and just it's again, it's not up for debate. If someone tells you that they don't like something, that's not them telling you, hey, convince me to like this thing.
Yeah.
It's just not how it works.
Exactly.
And that also leads into there's a spectrum for consent for each topic, so that you could have different levels of consent. You might consent to tiny spiders, but you just don't like gigantic, enormous spiders. And that's okay too. Like, I think the bottom line is what we're all saying is that everyone is entitled to feel the way they feel. So the next one after that is they can always change their mind about what they are and aren't consenting to.
Yep.
This is another hot sentence topic that I noticed bothers a lot of people because the argument is, hey, we had a session 0 and they said they were fine with snakes. Why aren't they upset that I had a whole town, a whole village of snakes eat a nursery?
Right.
Again, what that really means is what Anthony kind of said was it's kind of not a gray area, but like if someone says again, hey, I don't like snakes, but depending on the situation you put the snakes in might change the tone of how they receive that.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we've had those situations even in our games, and everybody knew we were playing an adult horror game, but hey, we had a situation where a person was triggered and we didn't get upset. Nobody got mad. The fun didn't stop. We just kind of.
But I will say this though, I fucked that situation up. I handled it totally wrong. Right. I mean, I'm sorry if I triggered anybody with the F-bomb.
See, we can laugh about the topic. It's all right to have a lighthearted tone.
Because even with that, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring that up. Even though I think I did all the pre-planning well, like I stated that we were playing a horror zombie game. There was going to be graphic gore, violence, curse words. I stated everyone agreed to that. I provided an X card. I should have noticed that someone was triggered earlier instead of, finding out about 40, 50 minutes into the scene. So, right. And so I can explain the scene to the person got triggered because of, there was a child NPC in the game and it was a zombie apocalypse game and the players themselves left the child around a zombie horde. And then unfortunately, the child didn't survive. It was due to the actions of the players, right? But that doesn't make it any better that the person was triggered and was bothered by that.
And again, I think this was actually before we also, the perspectives, with this whole idea, let's even tell people again, one of the things that I don't think a lot of people know, if you don't know, if you haven't read it, this particular document was actually inspired or came about because Sean K. Reynolds was working on his Stay Alive. And there was a section on consent, but it grew out of it, and it would have turned into an entire chapter. So what they did was they just decided to build it as an excerpt and give it to us as a whole. Because those ideas, especially when you're dealing with the horror genre, horror is, come on, there's so many different types of horror. There's body horror, there's, tentacle horror, there's, you name it, it's out there, and you never know what the thing might be.
And for me personally, I know I have a pretty iron stomach. There's nothing that really bothers me in gaming, for the exception of rape or racism. But when it comes to gore or anything graphic, nothing really bothers me. But that doesn't mean that I don't have a heart and I don't feel like I felt really bad. To be honest, I felt really bad, and what I should have did, which I didn't do at the moment, I should have fade to black that scene. And fade to black is when you just you give a subtle hints that something is happening, but don't describe anything in graphic detail and just move on to the next scene. right? But I still feel I still feel really bad about that scene.
And
About that whole situation. It didn't stop the game. We didn't actually find out about it till after the game, which
okay.
that's a testament to the player to be able to be triggered by something and still not wanting to ruin anyone's fun. But when that person told me, I felt really crappy.
And here's another reality too, though. This is another reason why this whole consent in gaming idea is really good for an online game. Because had we been sitting at the table around a table with each other where we could see each other, it probably would have been more evident.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big group, mm-hmm. and you had a lot of dynamic people in the group, a lot of personality. Mm-hmm. So when the person responded or reacted or was triggered, those of us who knew the guy, we all knew that, could have surmised that something was different because he kind of got quiet there. But we didn't latch onto that idea. We just thought, okay, maybe he's not, doesn't have anything for the scene. Mm-hmm. So that's something else that you take into consideration. Take into consideration the medium in which you're sitting at and how your gaming is taking place.
And that would lead into the last bullet point and I think this should go without saying, I don't think anyone has the right to even argue this fact.
Yes.
Like this one is non-negotiable. Anyone is allowed to leave in an uncomfortable situation at any time.
Yeah. So if you're feeling you're at a table, you had the session 0, you had discussed everything that off the table, on the table for the game. You get to the table, things are going great, but at some point, maybe an hour, 2 hours in, or whatever happens, something crosses a line for you, and it's more than okay to be like, you know what, guys, it's heading in a direction I don't like. I'm gonna head out. And again, you might feel kind of shitty for being that guy for leaving the game, but you have to remember that I think this is covered in the document too, but you're responsible for your own well-being. Again, this is to help GMs or other people at the table help you with your mindset or whatever traumas or whatever have you that might be going through. But at the end of the day, if you see that they're not doing it, it's up to you to preserve your sanity and leave the situation.
And and this is something that frustrates me, is that when we talk about these things and you have all these people out here want to call us snowflakes and this, that, and the third. Listen, I've been doing this for 40 years. 40 plus years I've been sitting at a game table.
Yeah, I thought you said 4 years. I said,
no, 40 plus years.
It's been a little longer than that.
Exactly. I've been sitting at a game table. I was in the military. I saw combat. I saw friends die in horrible ways that we won't even talk about. Like Anthony said, cast iron stomach. But there's just certain things that, no, I do not want to indulge in at the gaming table. The gaming table is an escape, for me. And, if you're crossing a line that I don't like, you know what? Hey, I'm going to be the first guy to let you know, hey, I'm not cool with that. Let's do a rollback. As they say in, my wonderful game, No Thank You Evil. Hey, no thank you evil. I'm not with it. We're not going to do it. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. But I'll be the first one to stand up for anybody, and I'll be the first line of defense in that. Like I said, I don't do gatekeepers. You can try to keep a gate around me and I'll kick it in. And that's how I feel about consent in gaming. Everybody gets a turn.
On the flip side of that, that's the naysayers of this document say, I've read this several times on different boards. That should be the only rule. The person should leave. Leave the game. You're uncomfortable with something, leave the game. And I'd be like, okay, that's cool for strangers. But are you going to honestly tell your friends that you've been gaming with for years, like, dude, you don't like spiders, leave the game?
Right.
Wouldn't a decent person want to make sure that their friend is enjoying the game as much as you are? I don't understand that whole argument.
And that argument is so lame in the sense of, I remember one of the guys said that in one of the videos. He was like, well, if you're doing a dungeon game, there's spiders in dungeons. There's also rats in dungeons. There's also beetles in dungeons. You don't have to have a spider in the dungeon just because there's spiders in dungeons. You don't necessarily encounter every creepy crawly that will be down there. So why would you do something to trigger a person, and especially like you said, your friend?
But we are getting a little sidetracked because there is more of the document to discuss. So
you trying to some real feelings behind
yes,
it.
exactly. But we should actually finish discussing the topic. Oh, excuse me, the document itself. Before we go on to our extended opinions. But following that little checklist we went over, where it breaks down the different levels of what is it important things to know about consent. After that, they give you a couple of tools to utilize in making sure that you're safe at the table, such as no words and go words, which are basically like verbal X cards or whatever have you. It even says it in that little section that you could even make physical, like go or no words, which is essentially is a no word is like a safe word in which if something's happening that you don't like, you just say the safe word. Like I don't know, just it says here to pick a safe word that wouldn't come up in the context of the game, so it'd be something really outrageous or something.
Butter pecan ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. So right. As soon as that's said, the topic needs to switch or fade to black or whatever have you. And on the flip side of that, we have the go word, where if a GM is approaching a sensitive topic, he can look around the table and be like, is everybody okay? And they'll give the go word or a thumbs up or whatever have you. And again, I've heard or I've seen people online saying that detracts from immersion, but it's literally like 5 seconds to check on that, maybe. It'd be like, guys okay? And that's it. Like, and it really does. I mean, I understand that it might break immersion for some people, but is your immersion more important than someone's like mental well-being? Like, not me. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I don't have much experience with go words, and I mean, I have experience with the X. I don't have much experience with consenting tools to begin with. I'm in the same group as Dean that I started out, in early D&D, and a lot of these tools weren't necessarily in effect when we first started gaming. Right, so I don't have much experience, so I can't tell you if it does slow immersion or not. But what I can say is basically what you said. If you could prevent someone from having anxiety or for feeling bad about any situation, what is 5 seconds in your gaming table? Is it gonna ruin your whole game?
You know what?
Ask somebody how they're feeling.
I'm going to approach it this way. I'm gonna hit that topic real easy. I haven't been at too many tables where the immersion level is like what you watch on
Critical
Role or anything like that. The gaming tables that I'm at most of the time, a lot of jokes are being busted out all the time, even in the most serious scene. The only time the immersion is like super important is when the combat actions are happening, when everybody's rolling dice. And even then, so people get off your high horse and stop talking about immersion being broken by giving a person an opportunity to say, hey, I'm not cool.
I was gonna really say a jerk trigger move, but I was like, everybody's a thespian until you play with them.
Right, and that's true though. But that's the honest to God truth. I mean, I have sat down. I've been, like I said, been doing this a long time. I've sat down and wrote these immaculate intros and all of these great descriptive scenes that I want to get into, and I'm reading the description, and somebody right there in the middle of the thing, I'm in my mode. I'm feeling my Shakespeare. I'm getting my Cambridge moment on. You okay? And guess what? Somebody go, okay, so what was the? So come on.
It be like, yo, hey, are you okay? Can we continue the scene?
Right.
And this kind of leads into the next topic in the document, which is recovering from consent mistakes. Because even the most detailed, planned out, like you get all the details from people and whatever have you, again, it's bound to be a slip up. We're humans. Sometimes things slip. But what's important is not harping that you made a mistake, or the person who got offended or whatever have you is harping on you for like, hey, you fucked up. It's recovering from those mistakes, being a human being, talking to the person like, hey, I'm sorry that this went like that. What can we do in the future to make it better? Blah blah blah. But again, it's very important to have that discussion if a mistake is made. You can't just sweep it under the rug and hope that they forget about it or whatever have you.
This is the most, in my opinion, this is the most important part of this document.
Yes.
It's because everyone makes mistakes, and even the people that are, once again, the naysayers of this document, I like to believe deep down in my heart they're not purposely trying to hurt anybody's feelings. And everyone makes mistakes. It's how you recover from those mistakes, and these are very helpful tools. And I'm gonna bring up another story because this kind of reminds me of, and it was Al, your game.
I don't want to cover my face for a second.
Yeah, I did one of these things without. I called it out at the table, but. Or just for context, you want to tell the context of the story, what I'm talking about?
Is it the same story I'm thinking of?
Yeah, I was the android and the...
actually... Yeah.
Sex orgy.
Yeah, so essentially we were running a Star Trek-ish game where they're hopping from world to world or whatever have you, seeing a bunch of different stuff. And they ended up on a planet that was mostly women. They were just a peaceful planet. I had made no mention of them being sexual or anything like that. But the players really wanted to pursue that direction.
Not the players, 2 players.
Oh yeah, two players at the table. Yes,
yeah,
2 players at the table out of 4, I think it was.
Out of 5, yeah.
I had 5 players. Either way, but what ended up happening was Anthony was playing a droid who was like a servant / helper to one of the players, and that player essentially saw Anthony wanting in character to be like, "Hey, we like shouldn't do this," or like I forget exactly the phrasing or what happened. You can describe it. Yeah.
So just give you context of me, Al, Dean. We run a big server and we run games for members on the server all the time. And a lot of times they're either new to Cypher system or new to role playing in general. We run a lot of games for younger players, maybe late teens, early 20s. And this particular game was me, another regular, and then we had 3 teenagers, 2 of them which were men, 1 was a female. Is what Al described. We went to this planet that was mostly female, and I was playing an android helper to one of the players. I saw that they wanted to take it in a sexual direction, like imply that they wanted to have some sort of group orgy. And I try to handle it in character. So I was trying to say, hey, this is not a good idea in character. I noticed that the female player was starting to get quiet and uncomfortable, but she wasn't saying anything. They noticed that I noticed that I was trying to stop their fun, so they attempted to turn me off. In game. And here's where I think Al messed up.
I definitely did.
Because I stated at that point, I said, yo, I'm not having an orgy game. And Al allowed them to turn me off.
But it did not get detailed or anything like that. Yeah. It was a very briff thing, but they did turn him off, and they did it was like a behind the veil, I guess is what it's called. But again, I'm still a fresh GM. In my mind, I didn't want to stifle their fun, but again, I wasn't thinking about it at the time. It came at the cost of Anthony and the other players' fun, and again, I wasn't thinking about it because there wasn't that, like, I saw it in character, but it wasn't really wasn't stated to me out of character. Hey, I'm uncomfortable. We shouldn't do this. I just thought, I was like, hey, they're fucking around in the story. Like, let's roll with it.
But like I said, I have a iron stomach. Like, I was more concerned with the one female player.
And you know what? That's something else that we can actually talk about. Consent in gaming actually can kind of touch on that, because I have a friend who went through so much hell, who wanted to game, and she was actually traumatized for years and never would try the hobby until she married one of my friends who's a huge gamer like us, but the guys around her had traumatized her so much when it came to D&D. She was she would get so frantic about, I don't want to play, I don't like it. It triggered her, because of the traumatic things, because when she was around the guys, either they would, do something like, well, if you can't quote, if you can't quote these lines from Lord of the Rings, then you're not ready to play, But then they would do, or if they did let her play, then they would do something rude, like have her character get raped or something because she's playing a female character, or she always made her the damsel in distress, never let her abilities blossom. So again,
you know what's funny you say that, Dean, is because once again we're gonna go back to another constant argument was, well, we never needed none of these. We never had these problems. No, these problems always existed. Exactly. It's just that no one, early gaming history, people didn't stand up for themselves like they do now.
People didn't stand up. You didn't have a community to lean on. Mm-hmm. You didn't have we live in an age of social media. We live in an age we live in the information age. So guess what? People can now reach out and find people of like minds, like experiences, and all of those type things. Hey, let's be honest. I am a Black guy, a Native American guy who is a gamer, and I was a gamer way back in the 70s. Do you know how much crap I dealt with? Anthony, you're a Hispanic guy.
Your guys know my story, but I don't think I've ever told this story on air. But my first gaming, just so you get once on context, I'm Puerto Rican. I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. Anyone that knows Queens, South Jamaica, Queens knows that it's a predominantly African American neighborhood, lower income neighborhood. I grew up, had a great life. We played games, sports, and all that. I'm not complaining about where I grew up at. But we got into D&D in the 6th grade, and we only played with ourselves, this tight little knit group of minority gamers, right? We decided to go to Manhattan. This is it's a funny and totally fucked up story. Yeah. We decided to go to Manhattan to play. It was like the 2nd edition D&D. Like they had, I don't want to name the store because I just don't want to name them. But we showed up and we played. It was myself, another fellow Latino gamer, and 4 African American. There were 6 of us. We went. We thought we had a great time. We didn't experience any like racism at the game. But as we were leaving and we were outside waiting, and we were actually all very happy, high-fiving, oh, this was great, oh, we're going to come here and play again. And we overheard our DM talking, mind you, we all 13-year-olds, and this guy was in maybe like his 20s, mid-20s, talking to one of his friends, and he literally said, oh, I ran for those N-words over there.
That's freaking wild.
When I tell you, we did not play with anyone else for like 2 years after that.
Right.
Like, it was just, we continued the game, but it was like we were like almost embarrassed. It had a mental effect on us. And, I still talk to 2 of those players, and we laugh about it now. And my name is actually an amalgamation of 2 derogatory terms because of that. But that was a traumatic experience for the 13-year-old me.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, we all have a story like that. I mean, I remember when I first went to school, and started meeting up with the people who played, and literally, they told me I couldn't play, and it was basically, you can't play because you don't know what this is.
Yeah, but
you don't have a clue.
Yeah, but back in the days, you would suck it up. Right. But now you don't have to. Exactly. So it's not that people are social justice warriors. It's that now you have, like what you said, there's more of a network of people to lean on and say, hey, this is effed up. It's not people complaining or trying to change things. It was good for you, but it wasn't good for everybody. And we want to make it good for everybody.
Exactly. With it. And that's really probably the biggest thing that you're going to see with, Cypher Unlimited. That's what we're all about. We're all about inclusivity. We're all about diversity. We don't care who you are. You want a game? You want to get into this hobby? You come on over, and we're going to show you what it's like to be accepted. Anything you need, you let us know, and that's how we roll at Cypher Unlimited.
But to finish up our discussion on the product itself, it actually ends with an like a actual checklist, like a physical, like you can print it out and hand it out to your players.
And we got to go over the checklist. Me and Dean are going on tangents, so we'll let you handle going over the checklist.
All right.
But this, all I'm gonna say this before you take over is this checklist is, in my opinion, people just read the checklist, didn't read the article, and wanted to start it, burning down the castle because, like, according to some people online, this is Armageddon itself because the checklist was created. But I'll let you go over the checklist.
So yeah, the checklist is pretty basic. It covers topics in different categories about what you might be comfortable with or uncomfortable with. The checklist is meant to use as either an opt-in or opt-out method. I forget how they frame it, but either way, it's meant for the player or the GM to be like, hey, this is the topics I'm going to touch on, or as a player, hey, these are the topics I don't want to touch on, or are the topics I'm okay with, or whatever have you. So let's go down the list a little bit here.
You should also mention that it goes by the traffic light design.
Oh, yes.
You get to choose whether.
So each topic or category has a green light, yellow light, red light. Very obvious what they stand for. Green, you got the go ahead. Yellow, a little unsure, might not have to have too many details on it, but it's kind of okay. And red is the hard no, meaning we don't touch that topic at all. And again, the checklist, the actual form, pretty straightforward. It has a spot for the GM's name, very self-evident. Player name or leave blank, which is very important that they put that leave blank there because it's kind of weird. And I could see, like, this is another comment I've seen about it. This form essentially is you handing over your list of phobias and triggers or whatever to another person. And that's very personal. So for some people, having that anonymity is important. So, that's why it says to or leave blank. Planned game theme, obvious, horror, whatever have you can put it there. And it even has a spot if this was a movie, like what rating would it have? G, PG, PG-13, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it touches on a lot of stuff and even has blank spots so you can add your own things. For example, in horror, they have bugs, blood, demons, eyeballs, gore, harm to animals, harm to children, rats, spiders, and then some blank areas that you can, put your own, like maybe you're including something else that's not on this list. And then again, there's those little boxes next to it that say, you get the green light, you get the yellow light, you get the red light, you choose what you're okay with. And it breaks it down for a couple other categories. I'm not going to talk about each, it'd be a lot to just read off the whole list. But
we'll bring up one of the biggest points is the actual what's written in these categories. And to be honest, that's a little unfair because nowhere in this document is that they said that this list is set in stone.
Yes.
Like if you could add or remove whatever's on this list, so I don't understand that argument. And one other point I think it's important to state: the GM should also fill out.
Yes, so that the
GM should fill out the consent form, and I would say in detail, just because you do have players that might want to do something. Like you said, you had the whole situation in Al's game. We're gonna have relations. We're gonna have a robot orgy or whatever. That's not necessarily cool. That might be something the GM is like, nah, I'm not handling that.
Mm-hmm. And a GM is a player too. A GM could be triggered as well. A GM's feelings should be respected and look after like every other person at the table.
I can tell you one thing, even as a game master, just things that and it makes it come up. It's not even something that I would say I have a problem with, but it's something that I never even condoned during the times that I run games, and that was like torture. I didn't want to play out, torture scenes and stuff like that. If the guy said it, okay, that was a behind the veil thing. Okay, give me an intelligence roll or give me a wisdom roll to see if you came up with the right torture techniques to do what you needed to do. But I'm not gonna go into detail with something like that. I don't want to talk about that because, for me, that makes me think about the brutalization of my ancestors. Mind you, I knew my great grandmother. I knew I've had conversations with grandfathers and stuff like that who lived back in the early 1900s, or my great grandmother, came from just when slavery ended, so she had a different perspective. So some of the stuff that they talk about or you read as you're learning, those things leave internal scars. And like I said, I can handle anything, but if I have a choice, I choose not to.
Exactly,
and it's your right.
exactly. And again, the checklist goes through other sections, not just horror. It talks about relationships, social and cultural issues, mental and physical health, and even has a section for you to add your own like
Own topic.
topics. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it even
Let me
has.
let me ask your guys a question. Do you think if you was filling out this document, right? I'm just curious, right? How many stuff would you check a hard no? You don't have to give me like the exact number, but do you think it's 1/3, 1/4, 1/8? Like,
You know what, I can because looked at this a few times. There's probably about a good 10 things in the various topics.
that'll be hard no.
That would be a hard no for me. Absolutely. And it's not because I couldn't handle it or anything like that, but you know what? I wouldn't find those things enjoyable in my escapism.
Yes.
I've experienced some things that a lot of people have never experienced. I'm a combat veteran. Okay. I've seen things that the average person I know, you're not prepared for. You don't want to see it. And I don't want to go back and relive those moments. I don't want to, because first of all, we're a group of imaginative people. Now, mind you, remember, think about being imaginative and also being able to remember a situation. That could be a little bit tough, and who wants to deal with that? Just like, they talk about the mental and physical health. Mental health is a very delicate, but a very important idiom that a lot of people don't understand. And a lot of people who are in this hobby suffer from varying degrees of mental anxieties and health issues. They fall on the quote unquote spectrum in many cases. And this is a way that a lot of those people cope. And this is a way that a lot of those people have their gateway into some sort of normalcy. And, it's also a place where they find acceptance. So why would you want to hinder that? Why would you want to, put a person in a position that the thing that they love to do, the thing that they, look forward to, the thing that is therapeutic in so many ways is now traumatic. It's now right up there in the category of the things that they hate the most or they don't want to deal with.
How about you, Al? That
It's
makes 100% sense, though, D.
yeah, most definitely, but it's the same thing as Dean. Like a lot of these topics, like if it was presented to me at a table, I'd be like, man, it's all right. Like it's not like I would seek it out. Like, hey, I find this. If this was in the scene, I love it. But for a lot of these things, like personally, wouldn't bother me too much. I mean, there are obviously a few on here that I definitely would not want to see in a game, but the things that I guess would be my yellow light, in my mind, I'm thinking again, different strokes for different folks. But like, why even like Dean was saying, why even include those things in a fantasy? Like you're trying to escape real life. Like, why do you want to be torturing people? Like, there's enough of that in the real world. Like, but again, that's my take on it. You like maybe you want to tell a very gritty, like heart wrenching story. Me, I go for like. You guys have been in my games, very lighthearted, fun. I never touch on very deep or dark topics. But again, that's in my mind, that's what creates a fun experience for the people at the table. But another GM might take it a different way and say, hey, for me, creating a fun experience is delving deep into these dark topics. And again, different strokes for different folks. But if you are going to dig deep into those topics, you have to be aware that not everybody is okay with them.
All right, there's a method to my madness because I'm leading to something. But I think on this list, to be honest, there's 6 things that I would probably X out of the total list. my second question I'm gonna ask you, right, is the stuff that you didn't X out, does it bother you that it's on this sheet?
Oh, you mean like the stuff that you're okay with, like?
Yes.
Not at all, because again, I'm of the like any person who has any self awareness should know that things that you like, people might not like. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Oh, so why does it bother anyone that this sheet exists if the most common argument is none of this stuff bother me, I don't need it? So why does it bother them that if they wouldn't X out anything on this list, so why does it bother them that the sheet actually exists?
Because the way I see it is the reason it bothers them, and I've seen in the comments that this is a commonly spouted thing, is that it hinders their creativity. They're not like, they can't touch on rats, so now their whole rat arc is gone. But like
that I've been working on that rat arc for the last 2 years.
Yeah, but seriously, that's something. I didn't see that exact thing, but it's like. So one of the things I actually did, like, I don't remember the comment verbatim, but it was like, okay, rats, spiders, that's 50% of the monster manual gone, or something like that. Like, but you got to remember that those monster manuals are just guides. Like, just because it's a rat in the book doesn't mean it has to be a rat in your game. It could be anything.
It could be an otter. There you go. Look at that.
I would understand that argument, right? If somebody advertise the return of the Rat King, right? And then they got all these players say, "Hey, I don't want rats in the game." I totally understand.
Oh yeah,
but that's a valid argument.
But right? Here's the deal, and that goes to the opposite. That goes to the opposite side of the coin. If you see a title, "Return of the Rat King," and you know you don't like rats, and you shouldn't be sitting at the table.
Yes, 100%. I was gonna say that too.
And what I was gonna say, my take on it, as far as the people saying, that this list is triggering them and so on and so forth. My biggest thing with it is, you know what? I honestly think that these are just people who want to talk. They just need something to complain about. Because again, in this day and age, you have so many different resources, and you're going to find somebody who wants to play the game you play.
I don't know, Dean, man. I got, 2 folders full of rat monster stories that I need to tell. I need to tell that rat story, Dean. I need to tell.
But you know what? Me and you will sit at the table. I can take the rats, even though nobody else can.
But
but you understand what I'm saying?
No, I totally get you. I'm trying to understand the mindset. Like, this is the problem I have with this whole thing. I can understand not liking something, right? I don't eat mayonnaise. I don't like mayonnaise. I don't eat mayonnaise. But if Al send me a link to the 100 best recipes using mayonnaise, right? I'll look at it and be like, I don't like mayonnaise. I wouldn't be upset that article exists. Exactly. I don't like I don't need it. I don't need mayonnaise. I'm perfectly fine not looking at this article of mayonnaise. Why would I read an article about something I don't like and then critique it? If you don't believe, or I don't want to say you don't believe in consent gaming because that's unfair to them, but if you don't believe in players triggering or the GM's creativity, shouldn't be interfered with or roadblocked in any way, then go, hey, I'm not using this. I'm not going to use it. That's it. My hands are washed. I want nothing to do with it. But to turn around and poo-poo everyone that does use it, like, that's just trolling. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I was just going to say, I guess we're past talking about the document itself.
There's one last thing you got to talk about in the document is the additional resources.
Yes. So before, because we are leading on a crazy tangent just now with the opinions. So let's close out the actual document discussion. We can go into our opinions. But the document itself, before the consent, the physical checklist, there's additional resources. And I actually didn't look at the additional resource. Like, I looked at the list here, but I didn't actually go out and look at what they are. But it's helpful stuff that is not this checklist, but other things that people have created to help in a similar fashion. And those things would be, oh, what were we going to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna name them.
Oh,
So
yeah, no, yeah.
highlight them.
Yeah, so
You wanna do that, or-
yeah, I got it. Yeah, so the ones that they listed here are the TTRPG Safety Toolkit, and that was created by Kienna Shaw and Lauren Bryant Monk, and it's just a compilation of safety tools for this hobby. I guess we'll provide the links for all this stuff down below in the description. And the next thing they have is the X card, which is, again, we all know what the X card is. I guess it's created by a guy named John Stravolopoulos, if hopefully I pronounced that right. But yeah, so you know what an X card is. If something you don't like, you drop the X card. That's it. The no thank you evil mechanism, which Dean discussed earlier, is essentially just that. It's the verbal version of the X card. No thank you evil, and the scene ends. And that was created by No Thank You Evil Monty Good Games. And the same page tool was the next one on the list, and that was created by Christopher Chin, and is designed to use before game begin, is to help everyone, again, very straightforward, be on the same page as to what you're going to do in the game. And the last thing on the list here is gender pronoun name tags, which again can be very important, especially in a convention setting, because usually, again, if you're at home, you know the people you're playing with, you most likely know their pronouns. But in a playing with strangers, playing with people you don't really know super well, this becomes very important. Because again, you might not know them too well enough to know what they prefer to be called or anything like that, and this helps without that awkward conversation. It's just on their shirt or whatever have you. It's just, hey, now I know how to refer to you.
And once again, just to go on gender pronouns, like everybody, people understand when someone's uncomfortable, not even uncomfortable, or not used to using gender pronouns. And from my personal experience, because I work in a military museum, so I have a habit of calling everyone sir and ma'am, and I've done that by accident. But as long as you make it an attempt, most people are not going to get offended if you get it wrong once or twice. But as long as you show an attempt to respect what they want to be called, that's all that matters. Most people are be accepting of that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
this definitely requires just being, a decent human being, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that closes out the document. Those additional tools, very helpful stuff. Again, we'll link them down below. But yeah, I guess we can go on to our opinions on the matter. Maybe common criticisms that people have been putting forth about it.
All right, before we go start, let me just show you how we set this up, because I actually had fun doing this. I basically scoured Reddit, all the Facebook, all these places where they were having discussions about this, YouTube, and I wrote down some of the most common criticisms, and hopefully we can either say whether we agree with it, we think it's a valid argument, or we just think it's straight up BS, and we'll call them out on it. So I'll say the first one, and then I'll let your guys respond to it, and then we'll move along from there. This one is very common. I saw this several times actually. It goes, my group doesn't need this document because we all know each other.
And
So don't use it.
Yeah, we already touched on this before. If you know your players, then you know what works for your table, and you don't really need it. So why even talk about it or read it?
Why give people a hard time about wanting to use it?
Exactly. It's pretty cut and dry here. Like, it's just like anything in a role-playing game book or, anything like that. It's a guide. It's not meant to be a set-in-stone law that you have to use at every single table, whether you know the people or not. And the fact, again, that's a comment like, I know my group, I don't need it. But the fact that a lot of people they seem very upset that it exists in the first place, which is, it's so weird. Because, again, you can completely just ignore it. You can just pretend it doesn't exist. It doesn't affect your enjoyment at your table whatsoever.
So, the next one is, doesn't showing up to play the game count as consent in of itself?
Hell no. That does make zero sense.
Nope.
Just because you show up to a game doesn't mean that you're consenting into any wild imagination. You still have to have a discussion. If you don't want to use the consent sheet, that's fine. But you could have a mini session zero, discuss it. If it's a con game, you usually have a write-up of what your game is. Just because you show up to a game doesn't mean that you consenting all your emotions and feelings to the GM's whims. That is stupid. Makes no sense. Next question. That is dumb.
Honestly, that's pretty much nail on the head. Like, we can move on. Like, but the next one is the climate will change at gaming conventions, and
Absolutely.
yeah, that is definitely a fact. Like, that is,
And we want it to
true.
change.
And yes,
It's a partially valid question.
It's a partially valid question, but it's also a partially stupid question. How about that? Because let's look at it this way. When you walk into a convention, you are walking in, getting ready to sit at a table with a plethora of strangers. I'm also, as the GM, getting ready to run a game for a plethora of strangers. I really, in order to give the best experience to someone, I need to know what I'm dealing with, and vice versa. You know what? Because you got to think of the prime example was even the disclaimer that was written for Monty Cook Games Castaways. That game was initially stated, and we were denoted to state to the players at the table that this dealt with more adult themes. Okay, I ran my games like a hard PG-13. I didn't, go overkill, but you could have with the themes that were built into that particular game. Luckily, the 3 times that I ran it, the tables were all adults. Everybody was good with a hard PG-13. We could have dipped into R if I wanted to, or if they wanted to. Great. So yes, the climate should change. We need to do that for people.
I'm gonna play the other side of this coin on this argument. What you're saying is 100% correct, but human nature tends to fear change, and they tend to fight change. And I could be wrong, but last I checked, there's no convention that said you have to use this document.
No convention says you have to use it. But here, and even with your argument, Anthony, and I love it, because you're absolutely right. Humanity does. We as humans, we do fight change. But here's that other reality.
So you can't fault somebody. The point I agree with you, but you have to be a little more lenient on this argument, because you can't fault somebody. You can't fight anxiety with somebody that's feeling anxiety because something's changing.
But let me put it this way. Let me put it to you this way. That's no different than the anxiety people are feeling when they go, oh, and you watch the video. Well, women ruined the game. Well, you're a black guy. You couldn't know anything about fantasy. I literally had a college professor. I had to go to the dean against this guy because in the creative writing class, he literally said that because of where I grew up, because of my ethnicity and my background, I had no clue. I had to be plagiarizing when I was writing my stories, because I talked about, raising my sword to the heavens and calling down the fire of the gods. And then there was the abyssal flames rising. I couldn't have known those words and came up with this idea. So I get it, but in the same breath, I can say to them, deal with it. That's just me.
And
I can respect that answer. You taking a stance. Me personally, I think that the change, it's going to change, but I don't think it's the drastic, the end of the world Noah's Ark flood that they're picturing. Because I have yet to see any convention say, hey, you have to use a consent document, or you can't run games here. I know there was an issue in one of the gaming conventions in England, but I don't fully know the story behind it, so I don't really want to comment whether they were right or wrong. But there was still no forcing a consent document. So I don't think that this is going to change the gaming convention scene as much as people fear, but I can understand the anxiety and fear for change. Al, you was going to say something?
I forget. No, I think I was going to say that even if it does pick up steam and conventions do start enforcing, like, hey, you need a consent form for your game, otherwise you can't run a game. Even if that becomes the norm, it shouldn't make people feel as such that, hey, me as the GM having to have this consent form really limits my scope on what I can do, and it's actually leading to the next point. But what was I gonna say? You can use it as much or as little as needed. Like if you as a GM could just put it. Again, I'm just speculating here, but if this thing becomes commonplace, I would assume, again, speculation, that a GM would just have to put forth, hey, these are the themes of my game, and then it would be up to the players to decide, hey, I want to consent to this game. I don't think it's going to be to the point where a GM will come to a table with a preset game that they have in mind. You know, they set up their whatever, they even have a little description of it, and players come to the table with a consent form to alter their game. That seems a little more like I can understand people fearing that, but I don't think that's how it would play out. If that makes sense?
Yeah. I think that this is, out of the first three, this is probably the most valid. It's not a critique on the document, but it's a valid concern. Let's put it like that.
Most definitely.
I'll do the next question. Al, you kind of led into it.
So what I was leading...
This kills a GM's creativity.
Yeah, so...
A GM's creative freedom.
But,
Well, you want to go out?
Yeah, I mean, because I was leading into it, but what I was saying when I was leading into it with the consent form was that, again, a GM might feel like this consent form might limit their creativity or whatever have you, but I feel like it's the opposite. Like, again, creative freedom is something different from your creative, like, I guess, prowess or talent or whatever have you. So you might feel your freedom being constricted, but that actually can be used as a tool to flourish your creative talents, because now you have to think of a way to alter what you have to still fit your narrative. And again, this is not, again, what we said earlier with, like, if you don't like rats and you're joining the Rat King game, like, you can't ask the guy to change the Rat King. Like, that just doesn't make sense. But if you're joining a game that has rats as, like, maybe mini minions, like we discussed before, yeah, they could be like dire otters or whatever have you. Like, you can just reskin them. That takes, like, literally no effort. Like, and they can still have the same properties of a rat. They can bite you and poison you. They can be flea infested or whatever have you. They just look like otters instead. Like, that takes, like, no effort, no work. Like, why do you feel...
It depends on the system, though.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about... I'm thinking about Cypher system.
Honestly, that's where I was going to go with this one. Because that was part of the argument. I remember reading one of the statements was like, well, this doesn't work for games that, require a lot of prep and this, that, and the third and blah, 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 blah. And actually, it does. Because no matter how you want to cut the mustard, you know what? Okay, let's just say somebody's triggered by giant snakes. Snakes are their thing. So why not just change it to lizard men who have a constrictor power? You know what I'm saying? It's still the same thing. You got all the same notes. My thing is this. It's not so much about stifling creative freedom. I think, like what Al was saying, it should encourage you as a GM to become flexible and innovative. I'm not saying everybody has to be the ultimate improvisationist. I know I love improv. I love when my players take me in a direction I didn't expect to go, because guess what? Then I get to flex my creative muscles. That's how I feel about it. But I understand that some people sit down at the game table and they have pre-existing ideas. They see a path that the game is supposed to go.
They got that tunnel vision on how their story's going. And
right.
They did all this prep work.
And I say to those people, I understand your dilemma and your pain. I started out doing that. I started out thinking that was the methodology, because you know what? I read the pre-written adventures and I tried to run them as they were. And my players taught me that no plan that you make works. Nothing that you do, because players will derail you in a heartbeat. And it took me a few years to catch on to that. It took me a few years to, even with Cypher System. Cypher System, when I first started Cypher System in 2013, getting my hands on Numenera, I was thrown off a bit because I kept trying to go back to my old standardized crunchy systems. And then I realized, wait a minute, let me flex a little bit and get those haints off my back. And guess what? I learned. So no, it doesn't kill my creative freedom. It actually encourages it. And that leads us right into our next question. I already have a session 0, so I don't need to read this.
That is such a silly concept because, again, they are correct in that sense. Like they had a session 0, they don't need it. That's true. Like it's just what we were saying before. Like if you know your group at the table, like you don't need it. However, though, there is something to be said about having these ideas in your mind when you have your next session 0. You just because you had one session 0 doesn't mean you're not going to start a new game at some point. This can help you broaden your horizons as to what to consider when thinking about someone else's mental state. Which again, this is not detracting at all from your game, from your session 0s or anything. You don't even have to use the consent form itself. But just reading it and having those ideas in your mind can help influence how you proceed and maybe make you more thoughtful on how you proceed.
I don't necessarily think this is even a critique. I think this is just a general statement. So, like, it's Captain Obvious, stating obvious. Okay, you don't want to use it. You use session 0, fine, because you're still using a form of consent. So I'm happy for you. Knock yourself out.
And that's basically what I was going to say. You just used the form, silly. I mean, you didn't have it all written out for you. But in the same respect, maybe you could have missed something. You never know. So if you used it at the table, say the day that the game came in, hey guys, I know we had our sessions here. Just want to reiterate everything. I'm gonna give everybody one of these. This way I just have everything fresh in my mind, so I don't forget anything.
And what bothers me now that I look at it, which is stupid because I'm the one that wrote it, but it says I don't need to read this because I had a session 0. If I would have understood it better, is that I don't need to use this, but even if you don't agree with it, knowledge is power. Just reading it, like what's the harm in reading a 12-page document?
Even if you don't fully agree with all the contents within, just knowing how the other side feels should help you in some way. Unless you're a terrible human being, I don't know. Like, but that kind of leads into the next one, talking about terrible human beings. This is actually a point that's been trumpeted all over wherever it's being talked about, and it's that this is.
I like the use of the word trumpeted, but go ahead.
Oh, I don't. Oh my God! Either way. Oh my God! But anyways, I had to take off my sunglasses for that one. Oh my God! Anyways, so the rhetoric or whatever that's being said is that this is nothing more than social justice warriors trying to control our gaming tables, and that is such a ridiculous point because, again, we've stated this throughout the whole video. You don't have to use this. You don't even have to download it and look at it. Like, just the fact that you feel like other people, like, away from your table are using it and, like, it's benefiting them. You feel like it's encroaching on your space. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, at all. Like, they're not coming to your table like, hey, you're not using the consent form, I see. You need to fix this. No social justice warrior or otherwise is coming to your house to do this.
All I'm going to say is this. If a piece of paper or a digital PDF can control you, you are a weak-minded individual.
The big facts right there. Like,
how about this? And let's just call a spade a spade. All right? The social justice warriors, I really don't think they care too much about your gaming table anyway. Because the people at your gaming table are the people who want to be at your gaming table. So stop. As Anthony said, just get over yourself.
Not for nothing. I don't claim to be a social justice warrior. I don't think I'm a social justice warrior at all. But that word is starting to become so negative. Like, it's almost like saying the N-word. You know what I mean?
It is. To me, it is. I know I'm not a social justice warrior. But and for me, it is a trigger word. It is a word that is derogatory.
Meant to hurt.
Yes,
right. It's derogatory. It has become. To me, it's become synonymous with people with agendas. People who are, basically they're out there just to be heard, even at the expense of the people they call themselves defending.
And even like you said, it's not necessarily that they have an agenda. If they throw this word around, they believe in people who have agendas.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that they themselves have agendas, but they kind of believe the people who do.
I mean, what it boils down to is, Dean nailed it. You don't have to use the freaking document if you don't want to.
Don't download it. Don't look at it.
No one's trying to control you. This isn't a deep state conspiracy to take over gaming. Like, come on, dude. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and again,
let's be honest, people. You know, those of us who are into this whole gaming thing, you know what? It's bigger than it's ever been. Gaming is bigger than it's ever been. And you know what? Probably still it's only 2 to 5% of the population that's really into it.
Yo, you sounded like a real social justice warrior right now.
Yeah, okay. If that's a social justice warrior, I'm him.
But
you know, but I'm just saying, you know. So you really think about that, you know, that huge, you know, that they're going to change the industry. They're going to change everything about it. You know what? The gaming industry is not what it was 15 years ago, let alone 40.
All right, so that leads me into the next critique. This is putting a single person's views over the collective enjoyment of others.
Nope,
not it.
Not at all. I will argue you till I'm blue in the face, and you give up because if everybody's filling out the form, then that means everybody has a say so in what's going on at the table, and more so than that, you know what? What if you end up seeing two people? You know what? Guess what? I'm really not into BDSM. You know, I'm just not into it. I'm not into that kind of thing. I don't want to see it in the game. You know what? But yet and still you're playing a horror game. Let's just say you're playing a game based on the Hellraiser franchise of movies. That would be something that you really had to take into account because you know what? They do have a lot of, bondage, sadomasochistic stuff going on in that particular genre of story. So you want to tell that particular story, it would be really good to know.
But if it's pre-advertised, then I agree with, I always try to at least give the other side of the argument. If that triggers you, you shouldn't be playing that game.
But that's my
like
point.
we said earlier with Rat King.
Yeah.
If it's pre-advertised what it is, then you are special for even sitting at that table. And I'm not even going to be nice about it. But you have a problem trying to sit at somebody's table and change the scope of what they're doing. If they're letting you know from the beginning that, hey, guess what? This is going to deal with some serious adult themes. It's hard R. There's going to be some bondage. There's going to be some masochistic things in it, whatever. Then it's up to you not to sit down at that table and try to change the narrative because there might be 3 other people that want to play that game.
Al, you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, no, what I was going to say was I think the actual critique or criticism here is not that putting a single person view over the group of others, especially like if everyone's filling it out, like you guys said, if everyone's filling it out, then no one's being put above the others. But I think what it's actually getting at is, let's say, again, everybody at the table is filling out the consent form, but everyone is okay with everything except one person who has problems with something. So in that case, it's kind of putting that person above the others, but in that situation, you're not putting their views over the enjoyment of others because you can still create an enjoyable experience. It's just that you have to alter it slightly because of one person. If it's the key component to your story, like the Hellraiser or the Rat King we discussed earlier, then the person sitting down should already not even be thinking about sitting down because they know it's a key component to the story. And that, again, if I was sitting down at a Rat King game and I have a problem with rats, I should be the one who feels like an asshole because I'm trying to force them to not play rats when he wants to do a rat thing. You have to realize that even though you have issues or troubles or whatever have you, you don't have to push it on people if it's the agreed upon collective stated way beforehand. It's a different thing when things happen it's not stated beforehand, happens in the middle of a game. That's a completely different thing. But again, if you're sitting at this table and you know that the game is going to go in a certain direction, hey, it's advertised the Rat King game, you are actually the asshole sitting down and saying, hey, this shouldn't be a Rat King game.
What, Al? That is perfect. What you just said is the perfect segue.
Hold on,
Because
I didn't give my opinion on this. I
you
just
did,
wanted to say one quick thing. This is another critique that, depending on how you view this, there's some legitimacy to this critique, right? Uh, it's pretty much the scenario that Al gave, right? You know, if it's that one person that's trying to change the main scope of the story, but here's why I don't think it's totally legitimate. Because once again, I'm gonna say this again. Just because you fill out this consent form doesn't mean that the GM has to include you into the game. Like there's nowhere in this document that says you fill out this consent form and you have to play me, play with me because I filled out this consent form. If you
or I
have,
have to do what you want.
yeah, there's no, you as the GMs can still communicate respectfully, like, hey, this is called the Rat King Adventure. I mean, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Privately, you can have that discussion and say,
But
maybe
I'm
you
not
could play,
changing my narrative.
maybe you could play the next game. But this game, unfortunately, is about the Rat King, and there's going to be a lot of rats in it.
Right.
So like, just because someone fills out this form doesn't mean that you can't have an open discussion and not offend that person, because there's something on this form that that triggers them.
Well,
So that argument doesn't fly with me for that case.
but you
You
know what, Anthony? And that's good that you said that because guess what? You and Al literally said the same thing.
know?
And you and Al both lead me or lead us into the next question.
Oh yeah.
And it says you should be responsible for your own mental well-being. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I touched on that earlier too, where it's like if you're sitting at the table and you know like they're gonna cross a line, it's your responsibility. You see that they're not gonna change it or anything, that they want to stick with it. That's your responsibility to get up and distance yourself from that. It's not, again, the consent form, all the tools, safety tools or whatever have you. You can have all of those at your disposal, but again, people are people. We make mistakes. And if you see that a mistake isn't being corrected or anything like that, and they're continuing to push the line that you drew, then it's up to you. The onus is on you to step away and say, hey guys, I know we had a discussion before, and I know nobody wants to be that guy, but it's your mental well-being. Like, it's you. Like, no one's gonna come and say, like, I mean, it depends on the situation, obviously, whether you have people who will defend you or whatever have you, like, hey, we shouldn't do that, this person doesn't like that. But in a situation where it's strangers, like, I don't really know the other person, I'm not gonna say jump up like, hey, we shouldn't do this. Like, if I'm having a good time, I'm usually wrapped up in my good time. I'm not really thinking about what's going through other people's minds. So if you're having a really bad time and you don't really say anything, that's on you. Like, you have to be responsible for your well-being.
I 100% agree with the statement and with the way you guys are rationalizing it, right? But for some reason, I don't think that this was written in that context. I think it was more written like, dude, I want to have rape in my game, and if you don't like it, man up and take care of your own mental well-being. You know what I mean? I think it was more suck it up and deal with it.
I have definitely seen those comments too.
Well, you know what, and that is probably exactly how it was written because of where it falls at. But here's my argument to that. That's why I take and put the onus on the people at the table, and I also put the onus on the GM. As a GM, don't be a jerk. Don't take this consent form and use it as a weapon, because I know some people who would do that. I know a couple of people who are just complete jackasses and would take, the thing that you said was your trigger and attempt to trigger you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make.
So I know that would happen. In the same breath, as a GM, though, if you put down the things that you're not going to be set up for in your game, because it should be a two-way street. The GM should let you know what his boundaries are too. And you get a player who tries to push that envelope, I will be the first one to be like, either you can recant that, fix it, or get up from my table. Or you know what? And if that's not the case, then guess what? Everybody, I do apologize, but I'm going to end this session right here because you know what? I can't run a game under these conditions. So my thing is, my whole point to that being, I'm trying to turn it on its ear, same way Al did. I'm gonna turn it on its ear and let everybody know out there is that you don't have to sit there and take anything, whether you're a player or a GM. Don't do that. Don't abuse yourself.
Ultimately, I think you are responsible for your own mental well-being. I agree with you on that. But I don't think that it's healthy or it's cool if other people at the table know your triggers and are
exactly,
intentionally trying to push those buttons. That's all I'm saying.
Oh no, so I agree with you.
So I think that this critique is valid in some cases, but once again, I don't remember where I got this from, but I'm not sure if I wrote this down because I thought it was valid critique or as I thought the person was just being a jerk.
But that's the point I'm making. You covered it, and you're absolutely right. Either way we look at it, a person knowing your trigger and trying to set you off, that's a ultimate dick move. And I would think as a group of players, if you knew that the person at the table was doing that, I think everybody at the table would be the coolest thing if they did that. Everybody at the table just got up and left that person sitting there.
But wait, one second, because there is a sort of flip side on this, and again, it depends on your table and group of people that you're playing with. But there's a reason people like horror movies and things like that. Again, which is why the spectrum exists of green, yellow, red. Just because you might not like something in graphic detail, doesn't mean that it shouldn't be in the game. Like, again, that's why the yellow exists. So this list can also help you, like, gauge the level of
graphicness.
Exactly, yes. So it's not censoring you, but it's giving you that sort of guide to help you still play the game that you want to play, but not push anyone to the point of But what I was getting at with the people liking horror stuff is some people do like to push their boundaries, and that's why the yellow exists. Say, hey, maybe we can push that to green at some point, and that again, it's a spectrum. It's a conversation back and forth, and again, it's not hindering anything to have those conversations.
That's a good point.
I like that.
That leads into having giant spiders on the consent list is stupid, I say. D&D is about monsters like giant spiders. I thought this was a funny one.
Okay.
We already touched on this one pretty well with the Rat King and the rats. So
no, but here's why I picked this one. The world, how am I going to say this without offending anybody? The world does not revolve around D&D. This is called consent in gaming, not consent in D&D.
But even
this covers every spectrum of games.
Come on, let's even that. Even that is the stupidest statement in the world. I've played D&D for many, many years. I have monster manuals from different eras over there, and guess what? I think there might be one listing for giant spider. Okay, yeah, and then they got driders in there, but a drider is not a giant spider. So what are you talking about, nitwit?
But idiot? I think the just the over encompassing thing for that criticism is that if players at the table are dictating what creatures are okay, then a person who might strictly be all about the book is like, hey, 50% of my monster manual is gone now, like what am I supposed to do? But again, this goes back to what we're saying about your creative strengths and stuff. Like, reskin it, repurpose what's in the book for Giant Rat into something else, make that Infernal Otter or whatever have you. Like, your stat block doesn't have to change. The stat block can stay the same no matter what. The description is the easiest thing to change. Like, you could just say it's something else, and it still has the same mechanical benefits within the system.
Listen, I give you an example. My wife My wife is one of the, she's a unique woman. She has no problem with spiders. She has no problem with most insects, but the one thing she doesn't like are millipedes. All those legs bother her. So we were playing around with D&D when we first got together, and I was going to use a millipede, giant millipede type creature, and I was like, you know what, I can't do that. So what I do, I just got rid of the legs. It slithered instead of creepy. Look at that.
And there you
it was
go.
the same damn monster.
And all it did was require you to change the description a little bit. It was still mechanically identical.
No big, no harm, no foul.
To be honest, I think the list itself, the monsters, I think people harp on there's a lot of complaints about I don't think the monsters are that much of a trigger for most people. I mean, you might have the arachnophobic person, but it's not. I think some of the other stuff in the other sections are more important to people's well-being than the actual monster list. But someone just saw giant spider on that list. It's oh no, God forbid, oh no. If giant spider is bothered, once again, the list isn't written etched in stone. It's not the 10 Commandments. If no one in your group has a problem with giant spiders, take it off the list.
Or
big facts.
I mean, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, and those examples exist all over the place. I have a buddy. He truly is deathly afraid of spiders. He's one of those people. He couldn't watch Eight-Legged Freaks. He couldn't watch Arachnophobia. We went to see Lord of the Rings. He read the book, so he knew when Shalab was coming. He knew. What did he do? He said, hold on, man. I'll be back in about 2 or 3 minutes. Got up and walked out because he didn't even want to hear the sound. Guess what? That's being responsible for your own mental well-being.
Exactly.
So even in a situation like that, so that's just brings me to another point. As a GM, if that's like something going to be integral to your game, you can let that person know. Well, guess what? I got this little card here, and when that scene is getting ready to happen, a couple of minutes beforehand, I'll hold this up to give you a warning, and then that way you can excuse yourself from the scene. You know?
See, but that's not the argument. That's you.
I know that's not the argument. I'm saying this is a way.
You thinking like a rational person. The argument is I don't have to do that.
You don't.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's right, but the argument is I don't have to do that because I love me some giant spiders.
Oh, I know. I agree.
And I'm putting giant spiders in every seed I got. You know what I mean?
No, I get it, but I'm saying
deal with it. Deal with those giant spiders.
That's what I'm saying. I agree with you. I know that's exactly what's being said. But I'm saying for me, in trying to just give people out there, if you love your giant spiders, go for it. If you got somebody at the table that you don't like them, give them an out. Give them an easy out. Let them step away while you're describing, the eight-legged freak and the whole nine, and everybody's good. That's all I'm saying. So there's no reason for you to complain about these. That is probably the one on the list that truly irks me. This one and the next one, both of those irk me.
Oh, yeah.
No end.
All right, so read the next. Who wants to read the next critique?
I'll read it since it irks me so bad. How about that one? This is a ploy by MCG to make money.
It's free.
What kind of stupidity is that? First of all, it's a free document.
But just to have the flip side of it, I can see what someone is getting at with this, because it could be considered pandering of sorts, because it is a big social movement to have, be careful safety tools, right? So it could be seen as, hey, they're trying to grab at that market. They want those people to be buyers. So it's not really they care about consent. They care more about reaching out to those people who will buy their forms because, buy their, not the form itself because it's free, but like their books and stuff because, hey, they back. They appreciate this sort of thing that we love. But that in itself is really silly.
That's, I'm sorry, that's reaching.
Hold on,
reaching a lot.
Let me counter that. Monica Games has grossed over $4 million in the last 2.5 years on Kickstarters. They're probably the second most successful Kickstarter RPG company out there. If they were a small market company that didn't have success, then I would agree with that statement, or I would understand that argument. But Monte Cook Games is pretty well known in the industry. There's very few people that I don't think everyone's played a Monte Cook game, but at least they're aware of what Numenera is. They're aware of what Invisible Sun is. So I really doubt that they need the free advertisement to drive people to their Kickstarters, because their Kickstarters are successful to begin with.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that might have. I don't believe that. I'm just saying that could have been
no,
was
no,
so.
no, I know you don't believe it, but I'm just trying to counter
He's
that
playing
argument.
counterpoint. He's playing counterpoint to your point.
No, and it makes sense.
Which I agree with, and that's why I was saying it's just a crock. It's a load of.
Oh, hold on, I got one more point that validates the. They just released Your Best Game Ever. They talk specifically. Matter of fact, this document uses some of the passages from Your Best Game. So they've been promoting consent and gaming for quite a while now. This isn't the first time that they mentioned this. Shanna Germain has been open
advocate for it
for many years now. So I can understand if they just came out of the blue and said, hey, yo, we released this, and then they spammed all the, Facebook, Twitter, they shot it out to everybody, but that wasn't the case. It was actually kind of released a little on the low key. So yeah. I really don't, agree with that argument at all. I think they just really care about consent and gaming.
I look at it, and that's the whole point. Like you said, Shanna Germain has talked about it for years. Sean K. Reynolds has talked about it for years. Monte Cook Games champions diversity and inclusivity in their games. Just look at the artwork in their books, going all the way back to Numenera. The character portraits show you diversity and, the ideology behind it. So why wouldn't they, after years of experience, years of publications, compile these ideas? And like I said, this whole thing just stated because that was going to be a small section in Stay Alive, which is Sean K. Reynolds' upcoming setting book release toolkit for Cypher system. And it just grew. It evolved into an 11-page, 12-page document that they said, you know what, we're not even going to worry about selling this or anything else. We're just going to give it to you. You know what? And what did you say in the beginning? The disclaimer states, this by no means is the end all be all. This is just some tools. This is just something for you to look at, and perhaps it will add something to your game. So if you can't see that, and this is a money grab, and, I really, I got a bridge to sell you. How about that?
But it's definitely a weird take on it because, again, they released it for free. They didn't make a big hullabaloo. I mean, they did promote it slightly with a few tweets here and there, but it wasn't like trumpeted on every Facebook page, Reddit, whatever have you. It was actually more spread by users or, other people who enjoy Monte Cook Games products.
Actually, the criticizers made it bigger than what it actually was.
And that is actually a huge fact as well. Honestly, I didn't hear, I heard a little bit about it, but the biggest thing I heard about it was all the detractors and the people hating on it. And,
Look, we looked on YouTube, and you had people, telling horror stories about this particular item. Monte Cook makes cringeworthy document, and all of this extra. And I'm looking at, and these are the people, they had 14,000 and 25,000 views of their video about this. So guess what you did? You sent, 14,000 people, you over there sent 14,000 people to go find this document so they could compare notes to what you're saying. And you sent 25,000 people to get it. So look at that.
At the end of the day, do I find this document useful? Absolutely. At the end of the day, am I going to use 100% of this document? Probably not. But who cares? It's worth having.
Yes.
If you don't agree with it, who cares? Someone else does. Why do you care? like I don't understand. I still don't understand that argument.
Yeah.
I think this, whether you agree with the content or not, you can't disagree with the intentions of the document. There was good intentions behind this document. There's nothing you could tell me otherwise.
Yes.
Monica Games makes enough money that they didn't need to release a free document, costing their own money, gathering art for, paying for layout, wasting Bear's time if they didn't feel strongly about what they put in this document. That's ridiculous. It makes zero sense.
And yeah, and again, at the end of the day, if you don't agree with it, you agree with it, whatever. It is just a tool that you can either choose to use or not use. Like, if it bothers you, you don't have to think about it. If it's not useful for your group because you know them, don't look at it, don't read it. But you cannot deny the fact that it does help a lot of people. Like, this is a very useful tool for people who have issues with, certain topics in games. And for you to sit there and say that it's becoming like SJW's corrupting the gaming world or like anything of that nature, like your creativity is being encroached upon, like, again, no one is forcing you to use this document. No one is saying that you have to cater your Rat King game to be rat free. Like, it's all depends on the circumstances and such that are presented at your table. But again, at the end of the day, this, if you don't believe in it or whatever have you, just reading it should help. Again, if I don't know, maybe you're a terrible human being, you don't care about empathy, but this is a very great empathetic tool. It helps you kind of understand what other people are going through, like what their mindset is on things that might upset them, and how to go about. Again, you might not have any triggers or any trauma or anything like that, but knowing that people do and having the tools to, like, again, check on them, make sure they're comfortable at the table, it's kind of crazy to think that people are hating on this for that. Like, it's so crazy.
And my final thoughts on it are probably just real simple. I'll say this first. And I've said it 1,000 times because you know what? It's valid. It's real. I came from a time, in this hobby where I wasn't accepted. I came from a time in this hobby where, much like Anthony, I played with, my group of friends because people of other ethnicities didn't accept me. They wouldn't. So I kind of wish that a document like this had been around because maybe it would have opened some eyes. But again, on the other side of that coin, if you have this document and you don't agree with it, you don't like it, guess what? There's this magic button on your keyboard called delete. Use it and shut the hell up. Let other people do what they will. If this is helping somebody, let it help them. You want to call me an SJW for it? Well, guess what? Call me one. I ain't afraid of none of y'all. I love you out there, people.
Yeah, I guess that's a pretty good way to end this. You've heard our side on it. You've heard some of the criticisms on it. Be sure, if you've watched this, leave a comment down below. Let us know how you feel about it, how you feel about what people have been saying about it. Let's have that discussion. Even if you hate it with all your heart and you wanna burn Monte Cook Games down to the ground for producing this, like, we can still have a discussion about it. Like, we can still, have a heart to heart. Like, maybe I'll melt your icy heart with my compassion. I don't know, but
this is a hot topic because we even had our first Val comment on a video we posted 6 months ago with an interview with Sean K. Reynolds.
Yes, that was quite. It was quite something to see.
I think that this is sort of political for some reason. Like there's sort of like the left and the right.
Well, you got to remember.
This is not.
But it's not. It really isn't. But see, everything is getting rolled into all the stuff that's going on. The Me Too movement. The feminist movement. All of these things are all out there, and you got people who latch on and go, oh, well, this is part of the movement. This is a movement or whatever. And to me, it's like stupid. Quit putting titles on stuff.
Yeah.
You know what? Women want equality. Give it to them. You know what? people don't want to be groped. Keep your hands to yourself.
D, you're going on a tangent, dude.
Yes.
Let me finish the point I was trying to make.
I'm about to go on.
The point I was trying to make is that gaming is not politics, right? Regardless of what side of the fence you're on politics, I don't care. All I care is if you're comfortable and you're having a good time at the gaming table. I have political views. Other people have political views. We don't need to bring that to the gaming table. And don't take this document and politicize it. That was the point I was trying to make. It's not about left or right. It's about rolling them funny shaped dice.
And again, it's not about the left or right. No politics involved. And I've said this a couple of times in videos. It's just about being a decent person, a decent human being to one another. Like, it's really all it boils down to. Just, again, trying to keep people safe in an environment where you're trying to have fun. Again, people make mistakes. Sometimes bad things happen. But again, this is a tool to help you recover from that, help you prevent those things from happening, hopefully. And it's just an overall very good thing to have. And if you're saying otherwise, might have some bad news for you about the state of your well-being of being a human. Wording is horrible. Like, you might want to rethink some things. Like, don't make it political. Just think about a person. Like, you're a person. People are people. Like, we have feelings. You have to understand that. Just don't think, just because something's being produced like this, it's not a personal attack on you and your game. It has nothing to do with your game at home. I mean, it might, but for the people who are getting really offended, what I'm seeing the most part is this is going to change my game at home, or this is going to change my game at a convention. But, again, we said that people have an aversion to change, but sometimes it's needed.
Dean is showing up to your house with a stack of the cassette phones like, fill this out now!
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like, it's take it or leave it, but at the end of the day, it is a very valuable tool. But I think we've said our piece.
We have one announcement that has nothing to do with this video. Next week, we are having the pleasure interviewing Bruce Cordell. Yes, the Bruce Cordell, the lead designer for The Strange, Gods of the Fall, the soon-to-release Stars on Fire, Jay Colossus. The list goes on and on and on and on. We could just talk for another 30 minutes about all the projects he's worked on. But if you have any questions for Bruce, and there's two ways you could submit them to us, and we'll add them to our list of questions to ask Bruce. One is to join the Cypher Unlimited Discord server and DM me directly with your question, and I'll see if we'll pick and select your question. And the other is just type in the word question in the comment section down below and ask your question for Bruce. And hopefully your question will get picked. And I'm excited. I'm stoked. It's going to be a great interview. If you watched any of our other videos, you know that we really love Bruce's work. So I'm psyched for this.
Yep. It should be quite a video. But thank you all for watching. Even if you hate what we had to say. We really appreciate you hitting that watch button and seeing what we had to say. But again, be sure to like, share, subscribe. Hit that little bell down below to see when we post new videos. And even if you really hated us, it would not hurt to share with your other haters that this is something you hate. You should show it to them. It doesn't hurt.
And for all you Cypher heads out there, always accept those GMIs.
Yeah. And Dean's coming to your house with a stack of cassette forms
and a hammer.
But so thank you all for watching. Again, be sure to comment down below what you have to say about the topic. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, and thank you so much. And from us at the CU, we will see you later.